plant tissues and animals tissues will be same or the different. So what we have seen that as their cellular organization will be different, like if you talk about plants, there will be cell wall will be present, whereas in animals cell wall will not be present. Next, if you see vacuole will be present in plant cells but they are absent in the animal cells. Other than this, there are plastids present in plant cell, whereas in animals it is absent. So what we have seen that their cells are even different, and how the tissues are formed after the cluster of cells are forming a group of cells. So because of that their cells will be different, so tissues will be different. On the other hand, what we have seen that plants, if you see their lifestyle, so both perform a different lifestyle. Like if we talk about plant, so they can make their own food, and other than this they are sedentary. They don't move for anything from one place to other place. Whereas if you see the animals, so they cannot make their own food, they are dependent on the plants for food. Other than this, they have to move for food, shelter, mating, means and other physical activities. They have to move from one place to other place. So because of that, on these, what we can say, structurally and functionally, the plant tissues and animal tissues are very much different to each other. Now if you see the difference, what kind of difference plant tissues and animal tissues shows and why they are so different. So the first one is, in plants most of the tissues are supportive and provide structural strength. Why? So if you see the plants, so it has to grow. It grows and it has to bear lot of fruits, seeds, leaves. So as it is not sedentary, but they need lot of support because they bear leaves, fruits, flowers and branches, stems. So because of this they need a lot of support. So because of that we can say that the tissues which are present in plant, they will provide the structural strength to supportive and structural strength to the plant. Right? Now, so most of the tissues are dead. Now why the dead tissues will be dead in plant? So if you see the comparatively that plants do not move from one place to other place, they are sedentary, they need only support like mechanical strength. So because of that, based on these mechanical strength, they need only cells, they can provide them some support, but they don't need living cells. Why? Because they do not need from one place to another place, they do not need actually energy. So because of that, these are the dead cells and they just provide them mechanical strength and they need very less maintenance. As if we talk about living cells, they need lot of maintenance, whereas in plant cells, because of that the plants are sedentary, they need not to move from one place to other place. So they need only tissues, and so that can provide them structural and mechanical strength, and they need very less maintenance. So second one is that because of that the tissues of plants will be dead. Now the next important thing is growth is limited to specific regions. So dividing tissues are localized in those regions. So students, if you see the plants, so plants grow throughout the life, but growth is limited to specific region. Like some regions grow throughout the life, whereas some regions they grow for some time and then stops. So where the like the dividing tissues means, what are the dividing tissues? These are the dividing tissues means they will help to grow in plants. Means how anything can be grown, because of the cell will divide and they will increase the number. Because of that the growth will be increased. So if I talk about plants, so there are two kinds of tissues will be present: dividing tissues, dividing cells, and non-dividing regions. There are two regions. Suppose that if we take the example of flower, so if you talk about flower, earlier it will be in the form of bud, again it will grow and will become a flower, but after a certain time of growth it will stop growing. But if you see the apex of the plants like roots, stems, they grow throughout the life. So suppose that if this is a plant, suppose that this is a plant. If you have planted a plant, so after some time you will see that sometimes like one part will grow very long, like here it can be grow like this, whereas some parts will not grow like that. So what we have seen that growth is at the specific region, means the cells, dividing cells will be present at specific regions where the growth will take place, like roots will grow, stem will grow, some stems will grow very long, whereas some stems will not grow very long. So because of that, the growth is limited to specific regions, dividing tissues are localized in those regions. So where the growth will take place throughout, here dividing tissues will be present or localized at that place. So because of that, what we have seen, how the plant tissues are, what are the actually quality of plant tissues? Most of the tissues are supportive and provide structural strength to the plant. Why? Because they are sedentary, they need not to move from one place to other. So the tissues will be supportive only. They just need to provide the mechanical and structural strength to the plant. Whereas if you talk about tissues, so tissues will be dead. Why they need dead tissues? Why do not need the living tissues? Because they need just a mechanical or supportive strength. They are not very active, that they need lot of energy, nutrients. They are just sedentary. So because of that, the most of the tissues will be dead. Whereas growth, so if you see the growth, so growth will be limited to specific regions, means there are some regions where growth will take place, where there will be some region where the growth will not occur. So means there is no any uniform kind of growth. Some part will grow very long, where some plants will not grow very long. So the dividing tissues, there will be two kind of tissues, dividing tissues and non-dividing tissues. So where the growth will take place, their dividing tissues or dividing cells will be present at that place, because these cells are responsible for the growth of the plant. So this is about how plant tissues are, like what kind of tissues in the plant present. They will be dead, they will provide the mechanical strength, and the growth will be limited to the specific regions. As we have seen in this example, the plants, if it will start growing, some region will grow very long, and like root region, stem region, some branches, whereas some regions will not grow very long. So this is about the plant tissues. So students, as earlier we have discussed about the plant tissues, now we are going to discuss about the what are difference in the animal tissues. So here mostly living tissues are present. So the tissues will be living. As earlier we have discussed in plants that the tissues will be dead and they will provide the support and mechanical strength to the plant. So why we need in animals, if we talk about animals, why do we need living tissues? So students, as these tissues are made up of cells. So as the animals, if I talk about the lifestyle of animals, they have to move from one place to other place for many life processes, life activities, like food, search of shelter and mating. For all these we need from one place to other place. So because of as we are moving, so we need a lot of energy. Whether any animal like human beings, dog, cat, whether any animal has to move from one place to other place for all these things like search of food, mating and shelter. So because of that, what do we need? We need lot of energy. So from where we will get the energy? We will get it from the cells, because in the cells mitochondria is present. So mitochondria, if the cells will be living, there will be different kinds of organelles will be present. So if the mitochondria, so where do we get the energy? From mitochondria generate the energy. So because of that, animals need a living tissues. So because of that, they have a living tissues present, because their lifestyle is locomotory. They have to move from one place to other place. Now, if you see the growth, so growth is almost uniform throughout the life. Why? Like as earlier what we have discussed, we have taken the example of plant. Somehow when we plant, suppose that if you plant a plant or if you see a small plant, when it starts growing, you can see that they are not uniform as they are like as you had shown to them. As when they were small, their branches will be something like this. When they started growing, some branches start growing very tall, whereas some are very small. So their growth was at the specific region where the dividing tissues are localized. But if you see the animals, or like suppose that if you take the example of human being, tiger, so as if you see the baby, so their body structure is almost like the same as in the adult human being. Means if you see the ratio of hands, fingers, face, body, length, it will be uniform. It is not like that when it will start growing, the hands will become more taller and the face will look very small. It is not like that. The body starts growing in a uniform pattern. So because of that, means their here growth is not specific in few regions. Growth starts, the person starts growing throughout. The growth takes place in throughout their body. Means if it will start growing, the fingers will also grow at some proportion. Face will also grow in the same proportion. Legs will also grow in the same proportion. Means the whole body part will grow in the same proportion as they were in the when they were child. So same ratio will be at the age of adult human being. But in plants, it is at the few specific region. Means some parts grow very tall, some parts grow very small. So this is the difference between the plant tissues and animal tissues. In plant tissues, the growth will be at the some specific regions, whereas if you take the example of animal tissues, so here the growth is almost uniform throughout their body. Other than this, if we talk about cell tissues, so here the tissues will be dead tissues and here the tissues will be living tissues. Why? Because we need lot of energy. So as for their different activities, life activities, whereas in plants they need they do not need very living cells because they are sedentary. They need not to move for anything. So students, what we have seen structurally, functionally, plants and animals are very different to each other. Like if you see their structural organization of an organ system, it is for more specialized and localized and complex in animals. Like as if you see the plants, they have also a complex structure, but animals are more complex than the plants. Why? Because the difference, where the difference reflects, it is reflects their mode of feeding. Like plants can make their own food, whereas if we take the example of animals, any animals, so if you see the feeding habit, it is very different from the plant. Mostly we are dependent on some other thing like plants and other animals. So their feeding habit is different. Other than this, its lifestyle is different. So because of that, what we can say that plant tissues are very different from animal tissues because of their lifestyle, their pattern of lifestyle, their growth pattern of plant and animals. Pattern of growth is different, pattern of feeding habit is different, movement. So plants are sedentary, human beings and all the other animals are moving, they show the locomotory lifestyle. So because of that, plant tissues and animal tissues are very much different to each other. So now we are going to start with the plant tissues. So students, again, if I talk about the plant tissues, so we have seen that the plant tissues will be very different from the animal tissues. Now what are types of plant tissues are present? So it can be of mainly two types. Broadly they are classified into two categories, meristematic tissues and permanent tissues. So if you must be thinking, what is the meaning of meristematic? So actually merist means it is a Greek word. Meristos means to divide. So they can produce the new cells throughout the life. So what are the actually meristematic tissues? Means they can divide throughout the life. It means name itself says that meristos means divide. So they can produce the new cells throughout the life. Can produce the new cells. So meristematic tissues means they can produce the new cells throughout the life, and meristematic means to divide. So mainly they are the fearless, tireless kind of tissues that can produce the new cells throughout the life. So there is a particular specific region where these meristematic tissues are present. So that meristose, that region will be the dividing region of cells. Now permanent tissues. So as the name says that they will never be divided. So the thing will be, they will be non-dividing. They will be non-dividing and specialized. And specialized. So the permanent tissues will be non-dividing and specialized tissues, means they have some work, they have some functions to do, whereas meristematic tissues will be dividing tissues that can produce new cells throughout the life. So it means they will be present at the dividing region and they are responsible for the growth of the plant. Now, so let us start with the meristematic tissue or meristem. So meristematic tissues are also called the meristem, means dividing. These are the dividing tissues. So what are the meristematic tissues? Group of cells that have capacity to divide throughout the life. So these are the cells which can divide throughout the life. Means like the cells which will be present, and that means suppose that it is a plant, so there will be some region where these meristematic tissues will be present. So this here throughout the life the division will occur, means cell will be divided throughout the life. So these are the group of cells that have capacity to divide throughout the life. They can tirelessly divide throughout the life of a plant. Now found at all growing parts of a plant, means where the growth occurs, these tissues will be found. So if you see the plant, mostly where the growth occurs, it occurs mostly at the apex of the plant, means at the stem or at the roots, means there are some portions of the plant, like if you talk about flowers. So after some time they stop growing, but the stems, apex of the stem, roots, they will grow throughout the life. So they are found at all growing points. Where the growth will occur, the tissues will be meristematic tissues. There, that will be the dividing region. So growth, how the growth will occur? Because of the cell division. As you have earlier studied about the cell division. So what happens there? When the cell divides, the growth occurs. So means the meristematic tissues will be present at the area where the growing points of a plant. Now regions where these tissues are present are called the meristems. So that's I was earlier telling you that the region means, suppose if we were discussing about the plants that they have their specific region of growth. So there the dividing cells will be present. So what are those dividing cells? Now you can correlate that those dividing cells. These will be called the meristem cells. So the dividing region will be called the meristem, means dividing region. So meristem meaning हो गई divide. So the meristem cell will be divided at the meristematic point. Now they are responsible for the primary and secondary growth in plants. Now what are the primary growth and what are the secondary growth? So students, here we have discussed found at all growing parts of a plant, and regions where these tissues are present are called the meristems. Means these dividing cells have some restricted regions. After that, when the cells come out, they will change. So suppose that this is a plant and it is a meristematic region. So here the cell will be divided, cell will start dividing. So what would happen? This region is called the meristematic region. So this region will be meristematic region. Now what would happen? After some time, some cells will be pushed out from this region. So some cells will be pushed out from here. So the cells which will be pushed out from this place will be called the derivatives. This will be called the derivatives. And the cells which will be again remain inside the meristem region, they will again divide and they will grow some like this. Again, so what happens because of the division, cell division, the growth is occurring. Growth occurs because of the cell division. So what happens here, what we have seen, the cells which will be pushed out will be called the derivatives, and the cells which will be remain inside the meristems is called the initials. So the cells which will be inside the meristem region, they will divide throughout the life and help to the growth of a plant. Other than this, if you see the derivatives, so after some time when they will be pushed out from the meristematic region, they will stop dividing, and these tissues cells will be called the derivatives. But inside the cells, inside the meristem, the cells will be divided again. So what happens after that, when they will be inside the meristem, they will be divided again and again and will form the more cells. Now what we can say, meristem tissues are forever, they will never die, they will the whole life they will divide only. Now again so here what we have seen, derivatives and initials. Now what would happen to that derivatives, where they will go? So after some times, derivatives, when they will pushed away or thrown away from the meristem region, after some time they will get matured. Now when they will get matured, they will change their characteristics and they will stop dividing and they will become the permanent tissues. So the initial tissues, cells which will be remain inside the meristem, they will be called the initials, and they will form more and more cells throughout the life and the plant will start growing. But the cells which will be pushed away from this meristem region will call the derivatives, and after some time, after due course of time, what would happen? They will get mature and they will stop dividing because they are not in the meristem region or dividing region, and after some time they will change their characteristics and they will not divide and they will form the permanent tissues. So that's why what do we say, that this region, dividing region, is restricted to the some part of the plant. Now they are responsible for the primary and secondary growth in plants. Now how they are responsible for the primary and secondary growth of the plant? So students, if you see in starting, if you see a small plant, it will be something like this, right? Like it will be something like this, and they will have a very small root. But when they will start growing, suppose that they will start growing, so what would happen? The root will increase more and more, and the length of the plant will also increase. So means what is happening here? The growth is taking place at the apical region, apex of the root, tip of the root and tip of the shoot. So this region where the plants are going vertically and downward and upward, so this will be called the primary growth of the plant. Means they are growing upwards and downwards. Downwards at the root side means root will become more elongated, whereas the stem will become more elongated. Earlier it was a small plant, now it is grown, so it become more taller. So this kind of growth will be called the primary growth. But what happens, there are many trees or some plants, what you will see after some time, when if you see the tree, what happens? When they were planted, their stem is very thin, lean and thin, but when they start growing, suppose that this is a tree, so what would happen? What you can see, that width is also increasing. So this, what is this width? Means here the plant was growing vertically, so this was the primary growth of the plant. But here the plant is growing horizontally, means the width of the stem is also increasing. So this is called the secondary growth of the plant. Secondary growth. So means what we can say, basically meristematic cells are responsible for the vertical and horizontal growth of the plant. Vertically, what we can say, this is a primary growth, means the plant is increasing in shoot as well as root system. It is increasing at the root side as well as also at stem side. Root side and stem side. Whereas when the width of the stem is also increasing, it means secondary growth is also taking place, and this kind of growth the area when it increases in width, this is the girth of the plant. This area is called the girth. So when stem is also increasing in their width, so means the secondary growth is also taking place in the plant. So this is about what are the meristematic tissues, means these are the group of cells that have capacity to divide throughout the life, means they are the tireless and fearless kind of cells which can divide throughout the life till the plant is there. Means they have dividing region, and that region is specific to certain area. Means after some time when the cells will be pushed out from this region, they will stop growing, and when they will get matured, their characteristics will also get changed and they will not divide again. But and this will call the derivatives. But the cells which will be remain inside the meristem, they will again divide and they will help to grow the plant, and these are called the initials. Whereas they have their restricted region. Other than this, they are responsible for the primary and secondary growth. So primary growth means the plant will grow horizontally or upward and downward. Means the growth will take place in shoot and root. After it means the root will grow. That's why what do you feel when we plant any small plant? It is very easy to take out or root out. But when it starts growing, when it takes some height, after some time we won't be able to take it out easily. Why? Because primary growth is taking place and root is growing more deeper, and shoot is growing more longer. So this growth is called the primary growth, and when width of the stem is also increasing at the same time, means secondary growth is also taking place. So this is about the meristem tissues.